Remember, the articulation is the important thing. Now, I want to go on with the other parts of the portfolio here to mention some other things. First, I need to mention that your degree plan draft needs to be put in the portfolio. That includes courses you want on the emphasis in professional development. Many of you, as you started this course, you have a draft degree plan. And we're going to ask you, as you're considering this course, to work very carefully and very in a diligent manner to look at what you do want to do and accomplish in your life. That's important, very important. So your degree plan is placed in the portfolio. That's your draft. And you're going to be asked to list some courses for the occupational emphasis. You're going to be asked to list some courses for the professional development. And your professor will address this more, and we will address this more when we get down to degree planning. Because we're going to spend a session talking about degree plans. And this is going to be general, of course, but what you can do right now as you begin to prepare this portfolio, are there things that you want to take while you're at Texas State? And on the other hand, are there things that you can't take while you're at Texas State? Are there things that you feel, well, you know, they're always offered at night, they're not online, I live out of town, I'm having trouble with getting those courses? You do not want to list those on your degree plan if they're not going to be accessible to you. So some of you are going to be planning and you're going to say, well, I'm living in New York City right now and I have a problem in getting any course that's not online or not by correspondence or extension. And you're going to wonder, well, I guess I don't need to put that course on your degree plan. That's absolutely true. And you want to think about it very carefully as you're planning and looking at those things. So there's an element that makes this all very practical. Because I may be interested in taking course X, but I know that course X is not offered in a distance learning format. And I'm saying I've got to have it in a distance learning format. Some of you will go on the website at Texas State and you'll end up emailing the departments here at Texas State looking at coursework that might end up online. Some of you are going to go to the schedule and you will end up looking at that also. You'll see courses that are listed as distance learning. I think that's important. But your degree plan is a contract between you and the university. It has a finite amount of time to complete it, or you run out of your catalog. Now, that doesn't mean they kick you out of the university. All that means is that when you run out of your catalog because you've been at it too long, you're going to have to go under a new catalog. And if there's a new rule that is placed into effect, you're going to be under that rule. A catalog is about 6 years, and they'll tell you on your degree plan something about that catalog. And it's very important for you to know what your catalog year is, and it should be on your degree plan. I want to tell you something else is going to be here. You are in business, at least some of you are, and we're going to talk about in the portfolio, another section is the PERT chart. We're going to ask you to do PERT charts in our program. The PERT chart is going to allow you to plan out for the next X number of years your goals. Now you're saying, wow, this is pretty heavy. Absolutely. Because we want you to take all of this data that you've acquired from this course, put it in a locked box, take your PERT chart, put it on your refrigerator or at your office and say, these are the goals I want to accomplish. So the PERT chart is extremely important. That gives you a planning document. Are you going to be punished if you don't go with it? No, but we want you to think about it very carefully, that the PERT chart is something that's important, something that'll help you in the future to see where you're going. By the way, there's another part of the portfolio that's optional. That's an interesting thing. It's called the appendix. It may contain documents you want the committee to review. Some students will give us a few documents of copies of their awards. Don't put originals in this appendix. If you want us to look at something else, and you have some awards, don't give us the originals, because remember, we don't give the portfolio back to you. We retain it. So if you want a document in there and you're going to go ahead and copy it and put it in your portfolio, you can put a little section at the end, attach perhaps a little folder to it, and say, this is my appendix for Jane or John Doe. And we can look at that and get a better idea of some of the things that you've accomplished. But remember, the appendix is optional, and your professor may address this more, or you can email your professor and talk a little bit more about that. But the appendix is optional. Now, you've looked at a lot of sections here. You've looked at a lot of sections. You've looked at the application for work-life experience. You've looked at the competency grid. We've mentioned the student resume. We've mentioned the position description. And we have mentioned the job task analysis. It's going to be important. We've mentioned the job competency statements. We've mentioned work verification letters, our military evaluations, our income tax. We've mentioned the important articulation statement. We have also mentioned the degree plan draft being placed in your portfolio. We've mentioned a PERT chart, and we've mentioned the appendix. The appendix, again, is optional. Now, your professor may ask you to place other things in your portfolio. Remember that when your professor emails you or responds by phone, or in case of an actual face-to-face meeting, your professor may ask for something that is not in this particular presentation. And that is something that's okay, because remember, this is giving you a guide of what you need to get together at the minimum level. We must score a 75, as we have been saying, when you turn this in. So when we go back, as we remember now, we want to talk about something new. Now, everybody's ready at this point. You're saying, well, I'm ready to start writing. In fact, I've already started writing. One of the areas we want you to deal with in the course is, of course, to chart a course for your life. Kind of redundant, isn't it? What will you do when you graduate? We have part of the portfolio, as we talked about a little bit earlier, called the articulation. Now, that's important, and I think that you're going to enjoy writing this articulation, at least some of you. Now, you know, I've had people that said the articulation was the hardest thing that they did, because we're going to talk about some of the beginnings, some of you as you just started out life, and you're going to say, you know, I had a rough childhood and it's hard to talk about these things. And I'm going to tell you, when you talk about your life, only talk about what you're comfortable talking about. There is a therapeutic value of writing about yourself, and I encourage you to take this portfolio and put it in a lockbox, keep it on disk, and hand it down to your children and grandchildren and all the way down. But the thing is, if this is going to be various forms of media, DVDs, CDs, whatever types of media that you're going to record your information on in the future, pass it down. But it is therapeutic to be able to write about yourself, and we want you to be able to reflect on where you're at and where you're going. And I think the articulation is something that's going to help you to do that. And we're going to talk a little bit about some things here that are goal setting. We want you to start thinking, because part of the articulation is to ask you about your goals. Let's talk about it. I call it thinking about the future. Thinking about the future. And that's important, as we said earlier. And one of the questions we want to ask you, are you really happy doing what you are doing? People will say, I guess I'm happy. I think I'm happy. And I always use, I call the old Sears example. A person goes to work for Sears, and he's 18 years old. He needed to do that because he just got married, and his wife goes to work for another organization. But we talked to him 20 years later, And he's 38 years old, and he's worked 20 years for Sears, and now he's working on the appliances and that type of thing. And we talk to him and we say, Bill, are you happy with your life? Are you happy with what you've been doing? And he says, well, I guess so. I guess it's fine. And we talk a little more with Bill, and we say, well, you know, do you like selling appliances and being head of that particular department or section? Oh, I guess it's all right. Yeah, I've raised 2 kids here in 20 years, and my wife and I have had it pretty well with her job and mine. We've done well. But do you like what you're doing? Are you happy with what you're doing? Well, I guess so. I think so. What you're getting there is a complex of where the individual never really made a choice of what he or she wanted to do. What happened was they needed a job and they began to evolve in the job. They got promoted over the years. I wonder how many of you have the same situation. You never really made a rational choice for that job. You just took it because you needed a position, it was open, and now you've been in it 15, 20 years. And you're saying to my first question, are you really happy doing what you're doing? You don't know. And my question to you is that if you're not totally happy with what you're doing, this is the course to make a change. You want to plot out in your goals in the articulation statement. You can go back to the downloads and see the different sections that we want you to write about. Want you to write about your professional and your career goals and your educational goals and your personal goals. These are all kind of melded in there, and they're all right there together. And we're wanting you to look at those. So when we say, are you happy with what you're doing? If you're saying, well, you know, I really wished I could have had a chance to become a lawyer. Well, you can finish this degree and maybe you're going to end up taking the exam and applying and going to law school. That's fine. You say, yeah, I'm a 38-year-old lawyer coming out, or a 42 or a 54. That's better than being no lawyer at all. Whatever you want to do, this is the time to make the choice. So I'm going to ask you with number 1 question, are you really happy doing what you're doing? And we find that a large percentage of Americans are not really happy. In fact, some have reported it as much as 60% as being discontented with what they're doing. And you can see that sometimes at various stores and various individuals that work with you. They're not really that happy with what they're doing. They develop a sour attitude. They're on a lemon. And they do not enjoy life. Life is too short not to be able to do what you like to do. Make that choice. Number 2, have you missed doing something in your life? Have you missed it? Well, you say, wait a minute, I haven't missed anything. I've lived a pretty good life, but, you know, I did want to play an instrument at some time. What's holding you back? Why don't you go ahead and consider playing an instrument, getting ready to do that, taking the choice and doing that? Have you missed playing that instrument? Could you have played it? Could you start now? That's the important thing, is being able to do this right away. This is important then, deciding if you've missed something. Could you now do something that would be worthwhile that you really wanted to do? You know, there's people who wanted something when they were young, like an electric train, didn't get one. They end up at a toy store and they buy one. And everybody says, why are you doing that? I said, well, you're going to get into collecting, and that's your hobby. They get into hobbies because they never had a chance to do that. That's what I want to ask you in number 2. Have you missed doing something? Number 3, have you avoided using some of your skills? Now, you notice the word I put, have you avoided? Some of us are afraid to venture out and try different skills. We're afraid to get out and try something that's new. We say, well, you know, there's no way I can do that. I just, you know, I think I'm a good whatever, but I just never tried it. people will find out that individuals like Colonel Sanders and Grandma Moses and all these different people through time maybe had a skill that they never used until they were elderly. Well, we don't want to catch you in a situation where you avoid using your skills. Now, we're going right down the line asking you to think about these questions. Have you avoided using those skills? Have you just simply said, oh, I don't think I'll ever try it. I'd sure like to. But you have deliberately avoided using your skills. How many talents do people have? We don't know. But we do know that most people never use the full capacity of their talents. And I saw them in counseling before. When I've had a private practice in counseling, I'd see people that had questions about their future, and they were hesitant about moving forward with their lives. And they will procrastinate, or they'll avoid, and they'll use avoidance behavior continually because they do not want to try out some of their skills. I think that's something you ought to think about. And remember, all of what we're talking about today is going to fit very well in the articulation when you start talking about your goals. But I want to talk about this early, right? Because this may influence the coursework that you're doing. Number 4, what goals have you set and avoided accomplishing? You have actually, in many times, my suspicion would be that after New Year's of a particular year, you've set some goals, and you've kind of put them out there and just left them and have never gone back and accomplished them. So the next year rolls around and it's still the same thing. It's like you're wanting to send a card to somebody who's sick, and you procrastinate on that, you wait and wait, and finally the person's out of the hospital and you say, well, I guess they didn't need it. I wished I had, but I didn't. Or you say, I need to visit my mother in Oklahoma, and I need to visit her because she's not been doing well, but I just don't know what day I'm going to take off. And you said, one of my goals is visiting my family more often. Or for some of you, in your articulation, you may talk about reconciliation. I need to reconcile. I need to get back with my daughter I haven't talked to very much. Or I need to restore my relationship with my sister in Des Moines, Iowa. I need to deal with my brother who's in Berkeley, and I offended him and we left in a bad note, and I need to make that up. I need to work with him. You know, after Pearl Harbor in 1941 and after September 11th in 2001, people began to reconsider some of their goals about family reconciliation. And they wanted to look and draw people together, and they realized how short life really was. Well, that may be a goal of yours. Take it. Another goal of yours may be one that you wanted to, as we said, you wrote out, learning to play the guitar, going to build a new play set for your children, or visiting your grandchildren more this year and you haven't done it. That's something you need to accomplish, but you've avoided accomplishing them. So I can have them set, I just avoid them. I just run the other way. Maybe some of you folks need to ask somebody to marry you at this time. You say, well, I'm just avoiding it, I'm just avoiding it, I'm just avoiding it. That was your goal, and you just wait and wait and wait. And finally, you know, it's you're too old and they're too old, and finally you're all beat up and worn out and wind-burnt and sunburnt and everything else, and you never make that step. Well, let me look at another goal. Do you blame your family and friends for goals you've not accomplished? Goal number 5. In other words, am I a blamer? I have all these things I need to do, but instead of doing them and getting them done, I say, well, the reason I couldn't do that because of so-and-so, so-and-so, so-and-so. The reason I couldn't get that accomplished 5 years ago was this, this, and this. In essence, you are really talking about a situation where you've had the goal for a long time, you just never get it done. There's always something that gets in the way. And you blame your family and friends. Well, they didn't help me any. family never did anything for me. They never really gave me any support. They never wanted to do this, that, and the other. That would allow me to go. And I've seen husbands and wives struggle with that because no one in the family wants them to get an education. No one. In fact, they are indeed sabotaging them. We found women who got into a situation where their husbands were oppressive, and they never finished their education. We've had men who had a lack of support among their families too, and nothing was happening. They never got anything done. And what I am encouraging you to do is don't blame anybody else. Take little steps if you have to. If you have to take one course at a time to finish this BAAS degree that we're talking about on this presentation today and my entire lectures that we have, if you have to take one course a year, and you have to take correspondence, you have to take distance learning, whatever you have to do to finish it, I urge you to finish it. Don't blame somebody else for not finishing. Get with the system. Finish. If you want it, if it's a goal, get with the system and finish it. And that may be one of your goals you write in the articulation. And remember, go back to the downloads on the Occupational Education website, and you can look at what's needed in the articulation. You know, while I'm here, some of you will write your articulation the same time you're writing your competency statements too. You're writing about your skills. You're going to be writing about your goals, about the different things that you've accomplished in your articulation. So I have people that are writing two different parts of their portfolio at the same time. And as we go through that in these lessons, some of you may see the value of actually working several projects at the same time. Mainly, keep up with what your professor wants. If your professor wants to see part of your portfolio, be sure you let him or her see it. Well, another goal or another issue that I want you to look at is, are you afraid to take risks in order to accomplish your goal? Now, every change is a risk. Every change is a risk. I risk somebody making fun of me. I risk failure when I start a new job. I risk change itself is a horrendous risk because I move out of my comfort zone. I change the temperature of the room. I go in a different direction, and that's a risk. Even being nice to somebody can be a risk because we never know when somebody's going to turn on us and actually say something ugly. They say, well, yeah, I'm an outgoing person, but sometimes people reject me. Well, don't change. Continue to do what you believe is right and how you handle people. But you must realize that it is a risk when I say hello to a person in an elevator or I say hi to a person. The joke went, and it wasn't a joke, it's somebody in New York, you know, he fell down, broke his leg, and started yelling for help. They came up and robbed him. Well, you know, this is the way society is, that sometimes people don't treat others well. But you can also get another 100 stories of people who helped individuals and saved their lives. So it's not all negative. There are risks that you take when you take another course, or when you start this program, you're taking a risk. When you're building this portfolio, you're taking a risk. When you're asking your wife to go out to dinner to try to settle an argument that you have, you're taking a risk. When you ask your husband if he could spend more time at home rather than traveling so that you could better your marriage, you're taking a risk. These are all risk-taking types of behavior. But I encourage you to take those if your goal is to better your life. This is important. This is important. Number 7. What will you do today to begin working toward your goals? You say, wait a minute, this is a presentation, this is an electronic presentation, and I don't know really what you have to do with it. No, I don't see you out there in the electronic audience. I'm just trying to help you steer your life the best way you can. And what I want you to do is, if you prioritize your goals, and they're going to be used in the articulation statement, in this portfolio, when will you begin? What will you do today? how can you do better today? So if one of your goals was, I'm going to get along better with my children, I'm going to spend more time with them. Well, when do you start? Start today. Start today. Each child is unique, so you need to spend a unique amount of time with each child. Work with each child. We certainly have family outings, but you need to have a situation of where that you spend a little bit of time with this child and a little bit of time with that child. Spend time if that was your goal. When do you start? Today. People are going to say that you've made a remarkable change when you have a set of goals, because they're going to see things taking place rather than things talked about and put off. So we're going to encourage you that, as you know, in the last sections of the articulation, you're going to have an opportunity to address all of this. You're going to have the opportunity to talk about your goals and how you're going to accomplish them. And goals can change, absolutely. Remember the second lieutenant that made his jump out learning to be a parachutist, and he goes ahead and makes his jump to be an airborne ranger, and he messes up his legs and he retires medically. Well, that made a dramatic change in that individual's life. But you've got to have backup goals so you're not destroyed. So this person can get up and say, well, I am in a situation now, I don't have quite the use of my legs as I had before, but can I be something else? Can I set new goals? So you're going to readjust your sights at some point. But we're hoping this course you're going to put all of these goals together. And part of your thinking is, I can do these things. I can have a positive view of my life. I can work on it. I can do this self-introspection. Well, one of the things that I will refer to in this course that's very helpful to you is a book called Discovering Your Hidden Degree by Dr. Michael Pearson. This is a book that you will see appearing during this course. And it does have some things to offer about introspection also. Well, I hope that we have moved along pretty well today, but I think while you're fresh and thinking about Lesson 2, I want to talk to you about something called non-collegiate credit. I want to mention that today. While we've talked about sections of the portfolio, one area you want to consider thinking about, if you have any training courses, not something that's been transcripted like your community college, the Air Force, for your Air Force people or whatever, but something that's a training credit. You took an IBM course, you took something from Dell, you took something from some other organization. Gather those documents up